In 1860, just 2 years after the famous debates, something huge happened. The Republican Party asked Abraham Lincoln to run for president. At the time, the country was deeply divided over the issue of slavery. The southern states wanted to keep slavery, and the northern states wanted to abolish it. Tensions were high, and many people feared that the country might go to war. Lincoln knew that the future of the nation was at a crossroads. He didn't want war, but he knew that he had to take a strong stand against slavery. He promised that he would not let slavery spread into new states and territories. His goal was to stop the expansion of slavery, and that was enough to win the support of many northern states. On November 6, 1860, Lincoln was elected as the 16th President of the United States. But even though Lincoln won the election, many southern states didn't accept him. They felt that his anti-slavery views would destroy their way of life. 7 southern states decided to leave the Union and form their own country, which they called the Confederate States of America. The country was now on the brink of war. In April 1861, just a few months after Lincoln became president, the Civil War began. The war was a fight to preserve the United States as one country and to end the institution of slavery. Lincoln knew that he had to act quickly, but he also wanted to avoid bloodshed. Unfortunately, war seemed unavoidable. As the war went on, Lincoln faced some of the hardest decisions of his life. He had to lead the country through the bloodiest conflict it had ever seen, with thousands of soldiers dying on both sides. But throughout it all, he never lost sight of his goal: to preserve the Union and end slavery. Throughout the Civil War, Lincoln faced many challenges. He faced criticism from both sides of the war. Some felt he was too harsh, while others believed he wasn't doing enough. But Lincoln stayed true to his beliefs. He continued to fight for freedom, unity, and equality for all people. He didn't let the difficulties of the war change his commitment to justice. As the Civil War raged on, Lincoln's leadership became more crucial than ever. The fate of the Union was uncertain, and Lincoln knew that the choices he made would determine the future of the United States. The war was brutal, and the country was divided. Lincoln's heart weighed heavy with the responsibility of making life-or-death decisions, not only for the soldiers, but for the entire nation. Yet throughout it all, he remained calm and determined, focused on his goal: preserving the Union and freeing those who had been enslaved. Lincoln spent countless hours at the White House, working late into the night, reading reports, and making decisions that would change the course of history. He was known for his patience, listening carefully to advice from others, but he also trusted his own judgment. One of the most significant moments during the war came in 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg. The battle lasted 3 days and resulted in one of the highest death tolls of the war. The Union's victory at Gettysburg was a turning point, but it was also a reminder of the incredible sacrifice being made. Lincoln, devastated by the loss of so many lives, knew that he had to address the nation. In November 1863, Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address, one of the most powerful speeches in history. It was brief, just over 2 minutes long, but its message resonated with people across the country. Lincoln reminded Americans that the war wasn't just about preserving the Union, it was about a higher ideal: freedom and equality. He declared that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The speech, though short, captured the essence of the struggle. It wasn't just about winning a war, it was about fighting for a better future. It was about ensuring that every American, regardless of race or background, would be treated with dignity and respect. Lincoln's words inspired not only those in the audience but also future generations. While Lincoln faced incredible challenges as president, his personal life was also filled with hardship. In 1862, his beloved son, Willie, fell ill and died at the age of 11. This was a devastating blow to Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. The loss of a child is a pain no parent should ever have to bear, and it weighed heavily on Lincoln's heart. Despite his grief, Lincoln continued to lead the country. Those who knew him said that his personal sorrow made him even more compassionate and determined. He often spoke about how much he loved his children, and the loss of Willie reminded him of the importance of family and the preciousness of life. As the war continued, Lincoln grew more committed to ending slavery. He knew that the only way to truly heal the country was to free the enslaved people who had been held in bondage for so long. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a bold step that declared that all enslaved people in the Confederate States would be free. This was a turning point not just in the war, but in American history. Lincoln's decision to take such a bold stand wasn't without risk. Many people, even in the North, didn't support the abolition of slavery. But Lincoln believed that the moral cost of slavery was too great, and that the country could not heal until it had faced this injustice. The Emancipation Proclamation was a significant victory, but it wasn't the end of the struggle. Lincoln knew that true freedom for all Americans would require more than just a piece of paper. It would require changing the very foundation of the country's laws. That's why he pushed for the 13th Amendment, which would permanently abolish slavery in the United States. He understood that the fight for freedom wasn't just about words. It was about action, and it was about creating lasting change. Lincoln's role as president wasn't limited to just speeches and laws. He was also the commander-in-chief of the Union Army. Early in the war, he struggled to find the right general to lead the Union forces. General George McClellan, who was in charge at first, was cautious and unwilling to take risks. Lincoln needed a leader who would be bold and decisive. After several setbacks, Lincoln found his man in General Ulysses S. Grant. Grant was a man of action, willing to make tough decisions and fight to the end. Under Grant's leadership, the Union Army began to win critical battles. In 1864, after a series of victories, the Union forces began to push the Confederate Army back. It was clear that the end of the war was drawing near, and Lincoln trusted Grant to finish the fight. By 1865, the Confederacy was on the brink of defeat. The Union had made significant progress, and the Confederate forces were weakening. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee, leader of the Confederate Army, surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. The Civil War was finally over. Lincoln's dream of preserving the Union and ending slavery had come true. The nation was beginning to heal, but the work was far from over. Lincoln knew that the country would have to rebuild itself, and that the journey toward true equality was just beginning. But the victory was a moment of triumph for Lincoln and for the American people. He had faced incredible challenges, both personally and professionally, and he had emerged victorious. Just days after the Confederate surrender, tragedy struck. On the evening of April 14, 1865, as Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., he was shot by John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln was rushed to a nearby house, where he passed away the following morning on April 15, 1865.